Okay, so I have this page set up, and like I was saying with Vectorworks, there's design layers and there's sheet layers. Right now, we're just gonna focus on design layers. So we don't have to do anything, we can just use this one sheet or one layer. And as long as we make sure that everything is within this gray bounding box, it will either print or save to PDF, okay? So we just need to make sure that we've set up our sheet accordingly. So this sheet that we're drawing from is 11 by 17. It is 1/4 inch scale and it is at 100%. So and it all fits on the page, okay? So at a 1/4 inch scale, at 100%, it's gonna, what you draw is gonna fit on that page, okay? So if I draw outside of this line though, I'm just gonna show you what happens. So I'm gonna print, save PDF. I will go over this again. I'm just showing you what it looks like. Okay, so what it did, and that's probably not a very good representation because it cut it off. I'll try and show something that gives a bit better, shows that it is cut off. Okay, so I can see, and even that bottom one, because of the margins, it doesn't show up at all. Oh, there it is, never mind. Okay, so I want to, when you're creating this isometric house, you want to make sure that all your objects are within the gray area. We can move them around, that's fine, but just if you start, and I will go over moving them around. Okay, so what we're going to do is this is a 3-dimensional graphic, but it's drawn by using all 2-dimensional tools. So most of what you see there is made from lines, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use my line tool. I'm gonna click and I'm gonna drag. Remember when we're drawing an isometric, it's at all our horizontals are at 30 degrees or at 150 or -30 and -150, depending on what direction we go in. And all our verticals are still at 90 degrees. So I can hold shift or I can tab in. I'm gonna just approximate this to be 14 feet at 30. So I'm gonna hit enter, and that locks and completes my line. So my first enter or return locks in the values. My second one places it, completes the line at those values. If after I hit enter, if I move my cursor, so if I hit enter, if I move, see, I can then still, I hit enter for the length, so it locks it at that length, but I can still change the angle either with my cursor, or I can tab in and specify a value and it locks it that way. If I move my cursor after, it's going to go, oh, well, you said you wanted those, but now you're moving your cursor. So I'm gonna delete those lines. Okay, so we're gonna kind of start with a V. So you're gonna use your scale to measure off the drawing on the paper. I'm gonna tab in and I'll do this at 20 feet. Okay, so I have my starting point basically, and what I can do is I can select both these objects, and in this case I'm just gonna click option drag. I wanna move this up, and when I click option drag, another data field box comes up because I can tab in and specify a value there. So for this case, I'm gonna do the mud plate or the mud sill, and I'm gonna go, I want this to be 1.5 inches and hit enter. Oh, I didn't have my option key pressed. See, I didn't do that. Okay, so I have to go back in, and sometimes this doesn't work as well. I can tab in 1.5, hit enter, and hold option and click. Okay, so there is that first little piece, and all my verticals are gonna go. So what I can also do, so I can click option drag, I could redraw these lines, but we really want to draw as little as possible. So what I can also do, there's, remember how in our Vectorworks preferences, we turned off those offset duplications because there is a duplicate command, okay? So it is under modify. I'm gonna need, no, it's under, I'm gonna have my line selected. Under edit, there is this duplicate and it says Command D. Okay, so if you're ever wondering where it is, that's where it is. That's the shortcut. You're gonna get to know Command D well anyways, so practice using that. I'm gonna go Command D, and it doesn't look like it did anything, right? Because those duplicates that we created, they're not offset. They stacked right on top of our originals. So if I just move these out of the way, I can see those originals that I had are still there. If, for instance, I'm going to go and now check that offset duplications, I'm gonna go Command D. Now I can see that it actually did duplicate, but what happens is it's moved in an arbitrary value. So it's great I have this copy, but I want to move it a specific distance from the previous point that I created. So that's why we undo. That's why we that's why we have our Vectorworks preferences, the offset duplications unchecked. So we just have to be aware though that I'm going to go Command D, and it doesn't look like it did anything, but it did. So now I've duplicated my the objects. Now I want to move them. So I can go Command M, okay? Or under Modify, there's this move, Command M. So here is where those Cartesian grids and those polar grids come into play. I can see that here's a Cartesian move selection. I can move my X values, my Y values, or I can choose polar and move a specific distance, a specific angle. So in this case, I'm moving up. I could use either. I can go, I want to use my Cartesian, and I'm moving up, so vertically. So I'm changing my Y offset. So in this case, I'm going to do a 2x12 or 1.5 by 11.2, 11 and a quarter. So my Y offset, I'm going to put in at 11.25. Okay, so I'm going to go up vertically 11.25. If I wanted to go down, I'm going to go negative in the Y, 11.25. So I can just type in an negative here. Okay, I can go 11.25 because I know that a quarter is in decimal is 0.25, or I can also type in a quarter. So I have a space for my 11 inches, and then I can type in a quarter and hit OK. And it's taken that duplicate, those two lines that I duplicated, and moved them up from that original object, moved it up 11.25. Okay, I'm going to undo that because I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go Command M, and this time I'm going to go polar. My distance is 11 and a quarter, or I can do 11.25, and my angle if I'm looking at my, referencing my polar grid, remember zeros to the right, 90 is up vertical. So if I type in a 90, then I can, that is moving up vertically, and I hit OK and I get the same outcome. Okay?
Can you type in like plus 90?
Yes. Well, you can, you don't need to, right? And the thing is, Command M, Vectorworks saves your previous values. So a lot of times if we're duplicating one thing and moving it, sometimes we want to move multiple objects that same distance. Like for instance, when we're doing these floor joists, they're most likely 16" on center. So we could go duplicate, move, and I'll draw one. And then we go duplicate, move again, and we can just hit enter. We don't have to re-type in the values. So the less work you can do, the better. So you could put a positive right up here, but you don't have to, right? And so that's just creating more work for yourselves. It's very intuitive. You will have to put in a negative if it is a negative value because it's assuming the positive, right? So you can't hope that it will figure it out when it's negative, right? Okay. I'm gonna stop this for now. We've just kind of created those lines. We'll get you guys doing that